I must have been about 15 years old the first time I heard Evergrace In Search of Truth. And once I heard that record and the guitar tone that was on it, I thought that is the guitar tone of my dreams. That is what I want my guitar to sound like. And it ended with me going on something, down a rabbit hole, I suppose. And I remember getting an amp I couldn't really afford. I got the vintage 30s, of course, like everyone else. I got the stump boxes and everything. And I still couldn't quite get that sound that I was after. So after a long time of some success, I mean, I still recorded a few records with it and it still sounds fine. But I couldn't really get close to that sound that I really wanted initially. So eventually I sold the PV5150 and went on with my life. However, then I watched a YouTube video a couple of years back by Jim Lill, who is a very famous YouTuber in the sphere of guitar tone, of course, and he said something that was really obvious once I heard it, and I felt stupid for not realizing it before. I had been listening to a recorded tone in the context of a mix. So a tone that had been filtered through a microphone and then through probably a pretty expensive recording console with all of the magic that entails, and then finally put in the context of a great mix. No wonder I couldn't get my tone in the room to sound like that. I was trying to find an orange on an apple tree, and that is the problem a lot of the time. You go to the guitar forums and you hear someone say, I'm trying to get this tone, and they always show you a recorded tone in the context of a mix. And then you hear their recordings and it's always just their guitar in isolation in the room, and they cannot find the tone. This is a problem for guitarists everywhere, and we end up tone chasing and going down rabbit holes and spending a lot of money that we shouldn't. That is my impression anyway. So when it came time to start chasing tone again, I was actually recording with my band Radiotrain. We have been recording a few tracks now, and this time I was after a Marshall sound, like a JCM 800 sound. It's a hard rock project, so it makes a lot of sense for the genre, but I decided to go about it a couple of different ways. Firstly, I realized that I'm not an expert on guitar tone by any means, and I wanted to explore, I wanted to learn. I wanted to start in that space and frame of mind. So what I did was I didn't chase after one specific tone. Instead I said I'm going to try to explore tone until I can hear something that I want to hear, something that I like to listen to. And it doesn't have to sound exactly like anything else. And it just made learning about tone a whole lot more enjoyable. So this is my first piece of advice to you if you're getting into trying to find tones. Don't try to copy anyone else unless you really have to. If you have paying clients who really want you to chase down tone, by all means. But if you're doing it for yourself, save yourself the sanity and your sanity, and just really try to enjoy the process of learning about tone rather than chasing after something very, very specific. Because you can still find some really good things that you normally run past because it's not exactly what you wanted. The second problem was I have a Marshall stack actually, but I live in an apartment, and as you can imagine I cannot crank that amp as much as I would like to get as much of it as possible into my recording. So I had to somehow find a way of mitigating that, and of course I turned to plugins. It's very convenient, and we all have them and we all love them, or most of us do anyway, because they're getting really, really good. And once I got into recording digitally, and with plugins, I really wanted to learn about it. And I have a couple of ideas here. If you're looking for a Marshall sound, I'll show you exactly what tool I was using and why I was using it, why I think it's a great tool. And you can listen to the results in one of our singles. We dropped a single called Rock is the Key not too long ago. And that is there, and you can hear the tone I actually made with this tool. But I'll also say that it's a great tool for learning about tone, and that is really why I'm making this video, why I'm recommending it to you. I have no affiliations, I am not paid to say anything, I just really like the product for someone who's getting into tone chasing and wants to do it in the proper way. So I'm going to show you a little bit here. This is a song that I've been working on. We're probably going to drop it at some point in the future. I really like the song, but I'm not going to show you what it sounds like today, because that's not what you're here for. I'm just going to show you the tools. And to give a contrast of what I'm using, this is like most of the plugins that you're going to be seeing out there. Once you go into the cabinet section, you see the different impulse responses that you can find. And impulse responses, you probably know if you've been down this rabbit hole at all. They are the central thing that really makes a difference for your tone. They are captures of cabinets and mic placements, basically. But once you see a list like this, it's not really useful, I think, to a beginner, because it's so hard to understand exactly what you're looking at. I mean, I can understand it, but I have a really hard time visualizing, especially once you have several microphones in the room and maybe you have several different cabinets that you're trying to combine. It just gets really, really confusing. So in order to make it easier to understand, I would recommend that you don't use this amp or anything that looks like this, although it sounds great, I should say. This is a great 5150 version from Castrog if you're interested in that. Just not the most pedagogical tool to learn about guitar tone. For that, I would instead turn to Mercurial. And this is a really nice, I mean, the company makes a lot of really nice tools for you to work with, and they have a lot of different amps as well. So even if you don't like Marshall, they have, for example, Engels. They have, I think they made the Mesa stuff, for example, and a lot of other things that you can find. And most of them come with this feature right here, which is exactly why we're here talking about this particular plugin. So once you open it up, it actually looks like this, most likely. So you have to go here to the speaker. And this is a visual representation of where the speaker is and where the microphone is in relation to the speaker. And here you can also have some freedom. You can choose different microphones. You can combine two microphones if you want. And now I have two microphones in play, and I can combine the two. And I also have a couple of different cabinets here to play with, or a few rather, I should say. Then I can mix the two different microphones together as well. Here, there are some other things here that I'm not going to get into, because these are not the things that make the big difference for your sound. This is really what you want to focus on, and then you can do the fine tuning stuff down here. So how does this work? In case you are not used to recording guitars, or you haven't done it for real, there's of course the risk that you're just going to jump at the first chance of going to these knobs right here, because this is what you normally do when you're in a room with your own amplifier. So that makes sense. That is what you're used to. It's how you think of changing the EQ. But actually, before you touch these controls, I would advise you to start by placing the microphones, because that is what happens in the real world. That is what we do when we record guitars. And to understand here, I brought you a speaker, not a guitar speaker, but still, it still works as a representation. We have the cap here, and then we have the edge of the cap, we have the cone, and then we have the edge of the cone. So basically, what you're seeing here in the program is a representation of a speaker. And then you can see the microphone and where it is in relationship to that speaker. And where we place the microphone has a huge impact on the sound. So normally I go with a cap edge. That's very traditional if you want to get a good balance in your sound. But as you go more to the cap, you will have a more harsh tone. You will have a more sort of, almost think of it as a beehive on some of these IRs. It can get really intense and super aggressive. So you can keep that in mind. If you go more towards the cone and eventually to the edge, I think it's starting to dull the sound quite a lot. So that is also, there's a balance to be struck there. I usually think the cap edge is what I'm looking for, but if I use several microphones, I might combine two different ones, and I'll get to that in a second. Then you have the option of moving closer to the speaker or further away, and this also has a profound impact on what your guitar is going to sound like. So if you go closer to the speaker, you get more of what we call proximity effect, which is basically you get a lot more bass. You can do this, for example, if you have a microphone and you're recording yourself and you just try to get really close into the mic, you will hear that you get a lot more bassy in your voice. Whereas if you go further away, you lose that bass, you lose the proximity effect. So that is what that is. If you go close like this, you have a lot more bass. If you go further away, sorry, I think it's the other way around, since it has 0 up here. So if you go here, closest to the speaker, you'll have a lot of bass. If you go further away, you'll have less bass. You'll have a bit more treble coming in. You can also get a lot more tone from the cabinet, and depending on the cabinet, you might want a lot of that tone, or you just might want a little bit of it. It can be too much of a good thing, so keep that in mind. And so you can move in this direction, and you can move in this direction. And once you have two microphones, you can of course move these around freely. And if you do this, you can actually combine one, for example, super harsh microphone, and then you can have another one which is a lot more dull, and then you can sort of go here and you can try to find a good balance between the two. So this is also a way of miking up and trying to find unique sounds. I think this is way more fun to do than if you try to just use like the presets that come with any of these plugins. This really gives you a lot more control. It makes you understand what you're doing, and makes you aware of the different options that you have. And again, like eliminating a few of the options here might actually be a good idea if you're trying to keep things simple at first. Since I have the plugin open, I might just say a couple of things about it. I mean, the things you need to know is that you have these different cabinets. So they seem to have included 4 different cabinets. So they have 4 different speaker types that you can play around with and see which you like best. They have a few different microphones that you can pick from, which is also nice, of course. They sound quite different. I would say the R121 is the one that stands out the most. I believe that is a ribbon microphone, whereas the others are dynamic. And then you have 4 different Marshall amp heads here. The ones that I've had most luck with, I think, are the 800 and the AFD. The AFD is the Appetite for Destruction, so that is Slash's signature amp. And those two I've had a lot of fun playing with. Usually also engage the Stomp Box, which you can find here. That's a tube screamer, adds a little bit extra punch. You can put the drive up if you like a little bit. I typically don't need to. You have a noise gate, if you really want things to go silent in between all your chugging. And you have some chorus, some reverb. I usually don't use these, but they're there if you want to jam, you know, a little bit of delay. So that can be nice to have in some situations. If you don't like Marshall, like I said before, there are other kind of amps. But overall, I just like this feature. This is really what pulls me into Mercurial. I think it's really good for learning about guitar tone and understanding the guitar tones you are making. And that is what I wanted to convey in this video. So I hope that this has been informative and that you've learned something, or maybe you had a little bit of a sort of recap of things you already knew. Can also be beneficial at times, going back to the basics. But most of all, I wish you good luck on your tone hunts. Have a good one.